Today I'm joined by two fighters here in from Utah, two former congressional candidates here in Utah, and I'll give them a second to introduce themselves. But today I'm joined by Andrew Badger and Jason Preston. So this will be fun, guys.
It's good to be on. Thanks, Chase. Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah. Do you guys just want to take a quick
Thanks,
second
Chase.
to tell everyone who you are for those who don't know?
Well, Andrew, why don't you go first since you're the boss?
Yeah. No, thanks, Chase, for helping us put this together. And I know Jason and I are both really excited about all the great work you're doing up in Cache County. You're really getting Gen Z involved and helping them understand, all these important issues that are happening. And I think, there's that disconnect with this next generation. They're not aware of, all the corruption going on in not only our state, our country. So it's great that you're helping expose that. Yeah, like Jason, I ran for Congress in the first district, so northern Utah. We had a great experience, great run. A couple of positives. We weren't successful in the end, but we did really well at the state convention. Won just shy of 60%. We also raised a lot of attention on issues that weren't being discussed around, abolishing, defunding the Department of Education, returning that power back to the states. And we also built a very strong grassroots network. So we have a lot of great volunteers. A lot of them were able to go on and help with the flag, repealing SB 31. We had that resolution passed at convention as well, which was great. And that fight is certainly not over yet. So yeah, no, happy to join and look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, great, Jason.
Yeah, Jason Preston. Like Andy said, ran for Congress in the third district. And, it was an epic experience. It was phenomenal to get out and meet so many incredible people. And I just really became absolutely impressed with Utah. I think we have more patriots here than anywhere in the country. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that was really surprising to me is, coming from Florida. I mean, I grew up here, but then I lived in Florida. And when I came back here from Florida, I really expected Utah to be such like a powerhouse, conservative state, because, we have such conservative roots here in Utah. With our heritage of believing in principles of liberty and fighting for freedom and, being aware of secret combinations and problems and dangers of government. And, but I really was expecting this state just to be really just kind of like where Florida was. And when I came out here, and especially once I started running for office with Andrew Badger, it was just fascinating to see that things were not that conservative in our legislators within our state house. And the more we ran, the more we got involved, the more we just saw there's corruption, there's problems, and we just realized we really need a clean house here. And so it was a phenomenal experience running. Met incredible people. But had, we saw that the grassroots people want that red wave. But, we've got some problems here in Utah with the media. We've got some problems with our culture. And after the campaign, I realized, this fight's not over. We just got to dig in. We've got to get involved with the grassroots more. We've got to get involved more with the youth, which, I'm really impressed with what you're doing with the Conservatine. And we've got to compete with the mainstream media here in Utah, because the mainstream media is part of the problem. It's really pushing this narrative that all is well in Zion and we can be checked out and don't need to worry about our politicians. They're just good guys that go to the same church as us and they're Republicans. So, they got it covered. And meanwhile, we're turning into one of the most, woke reds. Well, not one of, we're probably the most woke red state in the country. So, proud of what you're doing. And somehow, we're just like Andrew, we're just committed to doing everything we can to get this state back, win our backyard.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. We're going to be talking about all those issues that you guys brought up and how it relates to the youth and why the youth are going further left and becoming woke. But first, I want to ask Jason about his interaction with Governor Cox or Governor pronouns, as some of us like to call him, because he need to go around telling everyone or reminding everyone that his pronouns are he, him, his. But Jason, if you want to talk about that a little bit and what happened, and for those who haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, we've like I mentioned, our biggest effort has been on informing people and really trying to help people see what's happening in Utah. And right here under our nose, because we're such a trusting state, uh, we're an easy state to manipulate. We're an easy state for corruption to grow in. And one of the things they've been doing is they've been building these 15-minute cities and smart cities, and it's all documented. It's and Cox has been very heavily involved in this, and it's been one of my biggest concerns. Is you look at what happened with COVID. You look what's going on with China with the social credit scores. You look what's happening with AI. I'm not ready to move into these smart cities and have this stuff happen without public conversation. To see this stuff popping up on the governor's website, to see them moving forward, installing surveillance cameras and installing smart cities without any public conversation about it, I think it's a problem. We're moving into, when you think about AI and what's happening with AI, we are on the verge of the whole world changing. And, when you look at what the World Economic Forum is talking about with smart cities and the way they're talking about using those to control people, when you look at ESG and you're looking at, how these corporations are working with government to cancel people, this is very dangerous territory we're stepping into. This is extremely dangerous territory. And the fact that we're moving into this, not just moving into it, but that we're leading the nation and implementing these smart cities without any public conversation is absolutely concerning. So Chase, when we were at state convention, I thought this is a good opportunity to at least approach the governor and ask him about it. And, I kind of expected, because I've talked to a few state reps and basically asked them to come on the show and explain their if we're missing something in the show, if we're maybe off base, I'd like to have one of these politicians come and set us straight. Let's have a dialogue.
Yeah.
So I approached him, and obviously you can see in the video, I mean, he started off nice, but then he just lit into me, which was pretty shocking. It was pretty shocking to see how he responded. It obviously didn't make him look good, I don't think.
Right.
I think it made him look horrible. I mean, in fact, yeah, it would definitely did not look good for him to see him get so aggressive, especially someone who talks about being kind and talks about avoiding contention. And I mean, then to see him lie that he doesn't know what a smart city is. And then I asked him, well, what about a World Economic Forum? You've got an image of the World Economic Forum on your website, which then he lied and said he's never heard of the World Economic Forum. So I mean, just to lie like that, and I'm like, why lie? Why get so contentious unless there's something unless we hit a nerve? Right. So I mean, that was obviously a big deal. But then the thing that concerned me more is the next day or 2 days later, he comes out and hires or gets the Salt Lake Tribune to go and have a hit piece after me. And here's what really shocked me is the Salt Lake Tribune actually was far more fair than the governor's office. The governor's office continued to lie. They said, Jason Preston attacked the governor, and I mean, you can watch the video, and that's I love it because it's so blatant. They're lying. They're saying Jason Preston has a history of attacking politicians. I'm like, what? Like, where did that come from? Like, who was it? Like, this is the first time it's ever happened. And so, and then they realize that Jason's big into these QAnon conspiracies. I'm like, actually, I've always been very much against that stuff because I'm a big believer you can't sit back and trust the plan. You need to step up and take personal accountability. So, the governor's office continues to lie. And then they get they go after me. They try to destroy my credibility. And, Chase, what I have to ask myself is this, as I sit back and reflect, is this the type of country that our founding fathers, sacrificed their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor for? A country where if a citizen questions the governor about something he's doing, where the governor attacks him, gets almost physical with him, and then six his watchdogs after him. This doesn't sound like this is not America. I mean, what is that the type of country we want to live in, where we've got a governor and where we've got, where we're afraid to question our governor and afraid of being retaliated and having our reputations destroyed? So I've just got, concerns at many levels here. I mean, like I said, if we're missing something here, although I think there's a lot of documentation that shows that they are definitely building smart cities, and it is very concerning what they're doing. Let's have a conversation. But to attack me, to attack my character, to try to destroy us, that's dangerous. That's what our founding fathers tried to fight against, and that's what they fought against. And we're right back at it in Utah, the one state that should be the furthest from that.
Right. I
And
agree.
here, just real quick on that point, is that you have to understand is the media, especially in Utah, is basically a propaganda vehicle for the establishment. And I've seen this happen multiple times. The Salt Lake Tribune, they try to kind of portray themselves as these kind of left-wing hippies, radical freedom fighters. But really, I mean, they're just kind of the mouthpiece for, not only Democrats, but really the establishment rhinos in Utah. And so every time that these guys, there's Dan McKay, Blake Moore, Todd Wheeler, they'll go to the Tribune and they'll do these hit pieces and, they'll edit out the facts that they don't like. They won't give a fair, objective accounting. They're just basically trying to push a narrative. They're also not very bright. So they're basically just kind of trying to push this narrative at the behest of their handlers, which are, state government officials, which then in turn kind of give them access to interviews, and it's kind of this horse trading going on. So it's really unfortunate. And I think, and what they'll say is, oh, this is just with the 15-minute city, it's just this left wing, it's this right wing conspiracy theory, right? The government would never abuse its powers. Like, what planet do they live on? We've seen with the NSA, the abuse of mass surveillance tools. We've seen what happened under COVID when the government, there was reports about the CDC buying, tracking information, and there was all sorts of different abuses going on in terms of the government restricting you from going to church, opening your business. And look, I mean, with the 15-minute city in particular, do I think some mayor of Riverton has, evil plans to create a surveillance state? Probably not. But, the fact that they can be kind of these useful idiots is that when you build up this infrastructure, even if you have good intentions when you're doing it, it can be abused down the line, especially when there's an emergency or a crisis. So that's really what the issue is. I mean, I don't really think that maybe some of these state officials are, Communist Party sympathizers. But the point is, when they build this infrastructure that can be abused, even if they have good intentions, even if that's not on their radar, it will be abused. The next emergency, the next COVID, pandemic or whatever. That's when they'll, we have these, license plate readers, right? Well, that can be help in understanding traffic flows, and then we can, kind of build roads to reduce traffic. Yeah, I mean, might have good intentions. But what happens when there's an emergency? What happens when there's another 9/11? What happens when there's another financial crisis or COVID? The government will abuse that power. So that's why we're so conservative. We're taking a conservative path, saying we shouldn't build up this infrastructure, which then can be later abused by a government official. And that's the problem. And I think the way Governor Cox handled this has really exposed his true character. I think Jason and I have seen this across the board, where we have these kind of self-righteous, LDS politicians who go out there and they try to preach, we need civility, we need to get along. But then the moment they're ever criticized in any way, even what's reasonable criticism, they lash out, they get really insecure, go on social media and Facebook and call people names. And they, again, inevitably go to the Salt Lake Tribune, which is basically this mouthpiece for the establishment, and they'll do these type of hit pieces. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. It's just the way it is. And that's why folks like, Jason and I and others, we're kind of having to fight an uphill battle. And really the test I apply in all this is the establishment attacking you? That means you're a threat to them. That means you're trying to give power back to the people. And if they're not attacking you, there's a reason, right? There's a reason why they're going after Jason, because Jason's a threat to their power, to their interests. There's a reason why they're not attacking Blake Moore, John Curtis, Mitt Romney, because they view them as basically compliant. They're, kind of controlled opposition, where they gives kind of this front of, oh, well, there is an opposition, see, but they're not actually fighting back. But then you have people like Tucker Carlson or, the House Freedom Caucus, who actually push back, actually threaten their interests. And that's when they attack them. So my test, who I apply for, are they fighting for the people? Are they fighting for true liberty and values? Is, are they being attacked by the establishment? And that's what we're seeing going on right now with Jason. And that's how we know that, like Jason said, their reaction to this is telling us. Is it concrete proof? No, but it is, where there's smoke, there's fire, and it's showing that there's something else going on.
Right. And those,
Yeah, I go ahead, Chase.
sorry, no, I was just gonna say all those are great points. And the fact I just find it really funny that Governor Cox goes with the word attacked, that he was attacked. He is the governor of our state. The people are his employers. He should be able to be asked any question in the world and not lash out like that. It was funny. He came to my school on Tuesday to give his round Utah tour, whatever. And we were talking about disagreement and how we need to disagree better. And he had mentioned Saturday. He said, I messed up on Saturday. I was attacked and I attacked back. And I was like, that seriously? So I just think we have a lot of those politicians in Utah where they're so complacent. They're like, I do no wrong. I'm just this good little, LDS guy here in Utah that's nice and likes to play to get along. But in reality, that's just not true.
Yeah, I think what I've really been disappointed with is the lies.
Yeah.
Is the lies from the governor, the deceit, because the foundation for liberty is truth. One man who tells the truth can bring down a tyranny. It's one of my favorite quotes. It speaks to the power of when we speak truth. That is power. That is light. There's power in when we speak truth. That is how the worlds were created, is by the logos, by speaking. But tyranny is also brought in by speaking lies. And when we've got a governor that speaks in lies, then all of a sudden, what else is he? How can you trust someone who has clearly been exposed and being someone who is willing to lie and have his office lie and attack people? And again, is this the type of power? When we live in a state, in a country, in a time where you have a president who stands up and says that anyone who voted for my opposition is a domestic terrorist threat. Anybody who flies a certain flag is a domestic terror threat. When you've got the FBI, calling mothers that go to school board meetings domestic terrorists, are we in a place where we feel comfortable with our government having mass surveillance?
Yeah.
When we've got a governor that says we want to have digital IDs, where that can be a digital vaccine passport. Again, is this what we as Utah want? Do we feel comfortable with this government giving them access to move us into more of a surveillance state? Look where China is. China, with their social credit score. If you speak out against the government, if you litter, guess what? All of a sudden they turn off your money. We are heading that way in this country. Europe is heading that way, ESG. And this is what we need to think about in Utah. ESG is moving forward. It's moving forward through corporations, moving forward through government. When you attach that to a surveillance state, when you attach that to smart homes, to smart vehicles, and you have digital money, which we're moving towards, this is very dangerous grounds. And I think as Utahns, we need to say, let's slow down. Let's have a conversation about where this is going, and are we comfortable with that? Because these politicians do work for us. And what I find frustrating is when we bring up a rational conversation like this, we'll get politicians, those who feel guilty, those like Cox, and there's several others who will say, Jason's dangerous, or Jason's contentious, or Jason's, the same stuff they used during my campaign to try to discredit me. And, one of the things they would say during my campaign is, oh, he's dangerous. And I said, well, what did I ever do that was dangerous? Who did I ever attack? All I did is call out that there's problems with our elections, and call out, because I'm not willing to go along with this machine, and because I don't want to be a part of the machine, but more concerned about taking the machine down and giving the power back to the people. These people in power, they seek to destroy your reputation. And so that's what's hard, Chase, is we have corruption, and there's clearly corruption in this state.
And
when
can't
we're asking
argue
for a conversation, when we ask for a conversation, they attack us. That's, to me, even a bigger problem than the corruption itself.
And they couldn't attack your argument, right? They couldn't debate the actual facts. They have to do ad hominem attacks, right? And they have to try to associate you. Well, you talked with this person, and this person has these links. And that's just, and also look at think about pre-COVID, right? It was unthinkable that the government would shut down the economy. Even Anthony Fauci went on TV and said, we never thought we could get away with it. We never thought we could shut down the economy. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, they all said, we can never force private companies to give, vaccine mandates or you get fired. All these things that before 9/11, I mean, we never thought that the government would be able to have mass, phone surveillance and that, that would be abused one day. These things were all unthinkable. And if you were to raise them before what happened in the emergency, you would be thought of as insane. And that's the same thing that we're doing right here. We're saying, look, if we give this capability, this power to the government, which right now maybe you have Governor Cox, who personally I don't fear is some little tyrant when he's 130 pounds. But when we build that infrastructure and there is another emergency crisis, the government is going to abuse that. And while it's unthinkable now, it could happen down the road. And that's why we, as conservatives, we've learned we have to draw that hard line and not give an inch, because the moment we give an inch, the left will take a mile. And we want to talk about dangerous. Let's talk about these kind of squishy conservatives. They hate the word rhino. They freak out if you use that, but I'll use squishy conservatives. They're the ones who enable all of this. Mitt Romney will get up there and he'll complain about Joe Biden and all these things he's doing, open border. Romney enabled that. Romney votes for these huge spending bills. Blake Moore, John Curtis, they vote for these omnibus bills, which are these huge government spending bills. And then they try to go and complain. They're the ones enabling this. They're the ones that are dangerous through their lack of spine. And the enemy is far less dangerous than the enemy you don't see or you think you can trust. And what these squishy conservatives do is they take our seat at the table to fight back, and they basically are an empty suit, and they allow the left and the government to abuse and get away with all these things. So I think what this incident with Jason shows, it exposes the character of these establishment Republicans. It exposes that they don't have any criticism. There's no media in Utah, real media, who will question these guys. That's why Governor Cox reacted in what he's never been questioned before. I mean, imagine Trump. Trump was berated by the press every day of his presidency. He handled it quite well, especially when he was giving those news conferences during the COVID crisis. I mean, he obviously made some mistakes, that type of thing, but he was used to it. I mean, Cox has never been criticized. And that's part of the reaction that he had towards you, is that he was so shocked, because he's been so protected by the media, by, these journalists running cover for him, that all these other Republicans just kind of lavishing praise on him, that I think that part of his reaction was, wow, like, how dare you challenge me? I'm your ruler. And we saw that, right, Jason, as well with the flag bill, with Dan McKay, these state senators, Wheeler, these guys, they feel like if they're criticized in any way, it's an attack. That's why they say attack, right? Because they know it's a loaded term. They can't handle the idea that they work for us, right? Their egos are so big that to say to them that they're actually our servants, that they're representatives of us, is just so shocking to them. I think it feels it's a genuine anger from them, and that's why they're so hateful in the inside, but they project this niceness. I'll give them that. They're very duplicitous. They're very good at that. They're very good at saying, let's work along. Our state policies, unified. Governor Cox will go to these high school stores. But Jason and I have seen behind the curtains, and that's what we're trying to wake up people to, is that these guys aren't what they're projecting in public.
And I think you bring up very good points, because I think that's another thing that shocked me is, when you have Dan McKay go after you, or Mike McKell attack people, the governor go after me, the role of the media is supposed to be, they're supposed to hold the government in check. Instead, what I found it fascinating is after, after asking a simple question, the governor, he basically goes off on me. The media should have been challenging him. The media should have said, well, what is going on here? Like, let's dig in here. The media should have been really going after him. But like you said, the media is bought and paid for by these people. And that is why we have to get more citizens to stand up, especially when, and then think about the timing here. the timing when you've got the media, going after us for questioning the governor. What's happened to Tucker Carlson? Again, we are in dangerous times in this country, and we know we're so plugged into our phones, we're so plugged into like our bread and circus that we need to pull out of the bread and circus and look what's happening in our country. Look what happened to Tucker. Look what's happening to people who stand up to the machine. They're getting canceled. They're getting shut down. It is time for people who care about this country to take a step back and say, wait a minute, is this the direction I want this country to go for my children? Are we creating a better country for our children, or are they going, or is this kind of scary ground we're walking into? And should we slow down and think about it?
They're attacking anyone who threatens their power. I mean, let's go back earlier this year. I mean, with the House Freedom Caucus, they were basically ready to have a coronation for Mike McCarthy. He was the leader, which in effect is the second most powerful position in our entire country. It's more powerful than the vice president. Our second most powerful person. We weren't supposed to have any election, any debate. I don't know about you, but I don't actually know anything about McCarthy. He's a Republican, he's a congressman from California. I don't know anything about him. And we were just expected to coordinate him. And when the House Freedom Caucus dared challenge that, they were those establishment Republicans were like fighting in the House. You had, Dan Crenshaw calling them terrorists. You had even a Fox News host say like they're insurrectionists, and they all freaked out. And then they got, these concessions for the Freedom Caucus, which were like what any conservative should have wanted at the bare minimum of, let's secure our border. Let's make sure that we can actually read the bills before we vote on them. And I think, a lot of these establishment Republicans were embarrassed by how they acted by that. But look, again, Tucker Carlson, anyone who speaks out of line, they go out and they attack. I think in our state, you had Olivia Dawn, who was the GOP secretary, and she wasn't bought and paid for, or at least, in terms of, they felt like they couldn't control her. And so what did they do? They did the exact same thing they did to Jason and others, is where they do these hit pieces. And who do they turn to? Salt Lake Tribune. And they'll go to Salt Lake Tribune and say, hey, we want you guys to go after them. You have these kind of not very well-educated, not very bright journalists who then will do these kind of hit pieces of trying to tie, oh, well, you're associated to this, you're associated to that. Therefore, you're bad, which, I mean, if anyone's ever taken a logic class, it's a very poor way of debating. So again, I mean, that's my test. I look at any politician, I look at any representative, I'm saying, is the establishment trying to attack them? That's why I love Tucker. I know I watch him, I trust him, because they're going after him so hard. They're going after him so hard for a reason. That's why I trust Jason. That's why, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit concerned about who our party elected. I don't know Rob Axon. I think he seems like a nice guy. But why were they so eager to have him run? I know for a fact that they pushed him to run. I know for a fact that they pushed out Mike Byrd. And why aren't they freaking out? If Rob Axon, and sorry, Rob, if you're watching this, nothing personal against you, but if he is such a grassroots disruptor, why aren't they freaking out? Why aren't they attacking him? Where are the hit pieces in Salt Lake Tribune? Why aren't they, they seem pretty happy and content with him being in that position. And so for me, and again, this isn't necessarily anything I know personally about Rob, but that raises questions for me, right? Because I know for a fact that if he was a threat to their power, they would go after him like they go after Jason, like they go after me, like they go after the Freedom Caucus, like they go after Leah, or anyone they feel like they can't control. And so I think what we're talking about in this discussion, Chase, is that you have an establishment, and what I mean by establishment is those who control the levers of power and who have interest in continuing that controlled power. And you have the people. You have the people. And the battle of our time is, how do we get that power back to the people? Because it's consolidated into a few hands. And I think what we're talking about, Jason, earlier is, to say that we're a republic, if you're Aristotle and trying to kind of categorize what type of government we have, I think would be a stretch. I think we're much closer to an oligarchy, where you have a few people who are basically in office, controlled by a very small few number of donors who pay for their campaigns. Because of our campaign finance rules, you can spend unlimited amount of money through kind of these secretive PACs. And then because of our election system, it basically comes down to mass advertising on TV ads. So, there's no real accountability to the people, because of SB 54, these type of things. And the election thing is a real point, is a great example of what we were talking about earlier as well, is when you enable this infrastructure. Look, I don't necessarily think DJ Henderson is back there behind closed doors, changing ballots, that type of thing. But when you create this infrastructure where every single person is getting a ballot in the mail, what do you think is going to happen when our state goes the way of Colorado, which demographics are already, showing? We're going to become a purple state. I think Utah has about 10 years before we're a true battleground state, which actually will probably be a good thing for the conservative cause. But do you really trust some, far left winger to control our election system as it is right now with all these ballots going out? And so again, the left, these rhinos like Wheeler, like McKay, they'll all say, "Oh, these conspiracy theories around mail-in voting." It's absolutely insane. I mean, because you're going to be in the future, you're going to be enabling these, representatives who are going to have that power, have that control, and that that's something that should raise questions.
Yeah.
And so it's a very dangerous time right now. I think that, and this really goes back to this sense of complacency, especially among the youth, which we're kind of talking about earlier.
Right. And this is all this that you two have been talking about is happening on the federal, state, and even the local levels. I mean, we look at here in Cache County, we just had the convention, a new GOP chair. We had Kim Hamlin running, and everyone attacked her. Like she was attacked from everybody, including the current or former chair. And all this because she was a threat to their power. She was an outsider, and that's what they're scared of. Me and Andrew were talking about this before, but I'm working to get a young Republicans group started here in the county because we haven't had one for the longest time. And when people found out that Kim was going to be the advisor for that, they freaked out. They all of a sudden had all these people they wanted to have come in and help and be advisors when 6 months ago, I went to Shelley Giddings, now former chair, to say, let's get this started. She couldn't find an advisor. She said, we'll look for an advisor. She never found one. But all of a sudden, they have 4 or 5 people that they can push into there to try to help. And it just shows how they will do anything to stay in power. They really don't care about the youth. They don't care about whatever. They're just the establishment, and they'll do whatever they can to stay in power. And that is a prime example of that.
Well, Chase, I think one of the keys to getting the state back is doing exactly what you're doing. And and I will tell you this, there's a lot of young men out there and young women who are fed up and frustrated.
Right.
I think one of the things that you can pull your demographics off your social media, and on our Instagram channel, where I think we're starting to creep up on 13,000.
Yeah.
And when you pull our demographics, do you know the number one demographic on our Instagram channel is men 18 to 24?
Really?
Yeah. So now, again, I don't get into the political things there. I deal with more cultural, because again, the youth relate to culture. They don't get into politics, which you got to walk them into that. But we can win this fight. Because again, there's a lot of good youth that are fed up. They're frustrated. They don't buy into the woke culture, but they don't have a voice. And that's the one thing Cox can't, these and Curtis and Moore and all these rhinos that are just in for the power. They're, basically sellouts. These kids don't look up to them. And what we need, Chase, we need more kids like you, more of these young kids having the courage to stand up. And not just get into political stuff, but Chase, the cultural stuff, to stand up against the woke, LGBTQ, the trans movement, the stuff that culture will, because there's two parts of the culture, right? There's the woke culture that'll crush you, and then there's the countercultural movement of people that are like, I'm done with this. Like you've pushed me too far. And what we need is for people on the counterculture movement, where you are, and where a lot of these kids that are following our channel. We need them to have the power and the strength, not just to follow and but to lead and to share their voice, to call out Cox, to call out this garbage, to call out the trans stuff. So, you are doing what we need more of these young kids to do. And God bless you. We need a lot more chases, and I'm going to tell you, the tide's going to turn, because these young people, they're powerful. They're powerful, and they have powerful spirits who understand what's at stake. They understand that their chances of getting married is dwindling when people of their dating pool don't even know that they're their own gender. They know that the world is crumbling around them, and they can't find leadership to stand up for what's right. When you're governor, when your politicians all go along with this, when you're governor and your politicians push the mask, when they push all the woke stuff, they need leadership. But they're not. We've got young people that are strong, Chase, and so I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing, and that is the key. We've got to get these young kids and give them the courage to stand up.
Right. Thank you. And I think that along with giving the youth courage, we need to focus on educating the youth, because a lot of the youth right now are so lost. They don't know what to know because they're being indoctrinated in the school system, because the school system is absolutely just destroyed right now. They're being, the LGBTQ stuff, the trans movement, all this stuff, and everything that Democrats are trying to push on the youth, many are starting to believe because they don't see an alternative. And that's something that our movement needs to really focus on, is educating the youth, showing the youth that their freedoms are being taken away, and we have to step up to do something about it. I always talk about the Democrats, to the naked eye, to any young person, their agenda looks good to a lot of people without having any knowledge of what it actually means. They say we're the party of love, we're the party of acceptance, whatever. But in reality, when you really educate yourself and look into that, it couldn't be further from the truth. And so, we're truly in a battle of good versus evil, and we need to work on educating the youth. And that's what I'm trying to do, educate my peers and educate myself even more, so that we're on the right side of that battle.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. And Andrew, do you have anything to add on to that?
No, I think that's a great point. And maybe next time we can dig in more about kind of the cultural shifts going on in the youth. But look, I mean, I think like Jason said, I think the millennials have kind of really bought into the woke agenda, but the Gen Z, there's a lot of real strong young conservatives, especially men, who've kind of woken up to what's going on. And I think, as I've gotten older, one of the lessons I've learned, kind of a universal law, is that every action produces an equal and opposite reaction. And that's not just in, science or physics, that's culturally, that's socially, that's historically. And when you have one side, for example, pull so hard, it's inevitably going to produce that backlash. And I think, we're starting to see the tip of that backlash wave, starting to emerge. Look, I will be honest with you, I mean, Jason, I think we were expecting more of a red wave, in 2022. And that didn't quite materialize. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Probably the most notable one, and this goes back to Republicans caving, is the change in our election system. And I think you really can't downplay how revolutionary mail-in voting is. I mean, it's completely changed the dynamic of our elections. And, the only reason why it was allowed to happen was, one, this kind of mass hysteria they built up about COVID, right? Which was funny because also Wisconsin voted in person around the whole COVID hysteria time before the presidential election. And they didn't have any, spike in cases, that type of thing. I mean, you also overlooked the fact that everyone was going to Costco and piling in. And so this whole idea that we had to fundamentally re-engineer our elections because of COVID, enabled this mail-in voting. And then the mail-in voting has completely changed, dynamics of our electoral system. I think we're only really starting to wake up to the significance of that. There's multiple factors. One, but obviously enables fraud, where you do have, I don't know, we kind of don't talk about it more, but these, ballot mules. I mean, they can say whatever they want about Dinesh D'Souza, but when you have a video camera of a guy in gloves, stuffing ballots down a mailbox, I mean, it's pretty irrefutable that it happened, at least on some scale. And also imagine if Trump would have won and you had, a video of Trump supporters in their little MAGA, MAGA hat, stuffing ballots in a mailbox, they would have completely freaked out. Two, it then changes, there's more chances for errors, that type of thing. I mean, look, there was a great New York Times article, 2018, where basically they're saying, oh, mail-in voting's a 2-for-1 corruption risk. And this is the left, right? The left was against mail-in voting because why? What was the advantage for the right? The people who were using mail-in voting were either really elderly people or military. The military typically voted conservative. So it's like this 1984 thing where they used to actually attack mail-in voting as being more, and they had, these Jimmy Carter Center did this investigation. They showed examples. And now they've done this 180 where they say, if you even question mail-in voting, you're a, election denier, conspiracy theorist. Another thing was 2016, right? Where they said 2016 was rigged. The elections, they are even, Brookings Institute, et cetera, were saying, these machines can be hacked into. You had Elizabeth Warren, write a letter saying we have these companies who are unregulated, privately owned, who can control our election infrastructure, Dominion, who she cited. And now if you even question, the fact that we have these, again, unregulated, untransparent, privately held companies controlling these vote tabulators, you're this conspiracy theorist. So anyways, I mean, the Republicans caved, they allowed mail-in voting to happen, and that has completely changed the dynamics, because in a mid-year cycle, what you would usually have is very well-informed and motivated people showing up at the polls to vote that day. And where we've changed that whole dynamic is now every person is getting a ballot. And let's be honest, most people aren't paying attention or aren't really well-informed. And that was a view and concern held by our founders. And that's why we created this kind of filtering mechanism through a republic. And in their time, kind of landowning people would only vote. But, so everyone's voting. And so you're having really uninformed voters, who are oftentimes checking a box. I mean, I think I saw a study where there's a 5% bump if your name was first on a ballot, because a lot of people would just kind of go down the ballot and just put the first name.
They go with the name that sounds
the
familiar.
Radio, the TV, yeah. And so that's completely changed the election. So we haven't seen that red wave. But like Jason mentioned, that cultural red wave is hitting, and they can't deny that. They can't deny when Tucker Carlson is the number one show on, in the world. They can't deny those things. So I think, the cultural wave is happening. And I think that political wave is going to catch up eventually. We didn't see it like we thought we would in 2022, but it is going to happen, especially as this younger generation emerges. I think there is going to be a little bit of an issue. I think maybe again we'll talk about the youth topic next time, but where there's a discord between men and women, and I've kind of personally seen my conservative friends growing up, who are college Republican president or that type of thing, and they marry a left-wing woman and they naturally kind of gravitate towards that. I think that's troublesome because
that's also part of the beta male problem we have in this country.
Yeah.
We have a problem with men not being able to be strong men anymore, and so it's the women that are picking up and leading because the men aren't leaders. So if you have a strong woman and a weak man, strong women are great, but you need strong leaders to be men. We've got to get men to stand up and lead again, and that's part of that problem.
For sure.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of. We could probably spend a lot of time. I'd love to get like Jordan Peterson, a bunch of people talking about kind of different political traits among men and women, because there's a lot going on there in terms of how we view the world and nurture it, your kind of 5 big personality traits, all these types of things. But the reality is, there is this kind of divide between
women and men
are
separate, different, and they are meant to be different. They're genetically meant to come together to complete a whole. You bring them together as completion, but they have different strengths. And when men are not strong in the strengths they're supposed to be strong in, it creates problems in the country. Countries, rise and fall on the strength of men, and that is a massive problem for another conversation. But we have a massive problem with the failure of men.
Right.
And they rise and fall though with motherhood too. And so actually, I love this quote from de Tocqueville, who was, a French political philosopher in the 19th century. He came to America, and his thesis was, well, how does this American democracy work?
Yeah,
And actually,
democracy in
by the
America.
end, democracy in America. And by the end, he said, actually, the number one most important reason is mothers, because mothers are the ones who have that value transfer, right? They instill those values in the next generation of, valuing individual liberty, valuing, integrity, valuing hard work, that kind of Protestant work ethic. And that's kind of how you pass it on from one generation to the next. And I mean, yeah, for a number of reasons, government, schools, all sorts of things. That's dissipated. I mean, there was a pretty good series on HBO called John Adams, which
Yeah, that
was
was
based
great.
on that biography. And there's this clip where the little kid is playing with these kind of tin, toy soldiers, and Abigail Adams comes over, and you think she's going to kind of rebuke him or whatever, and then she kind of sets them back up, and she like helps him fire the cannon.
Yeah.
And it's a small thing, but it's kind of showing that instilling, like, patriots, have to stand up, and they have to fight, and and that's how you kind of have that value transfer. And it's kind of been broken in our country. And also you have the other factor of not just values, but you have simple demographics. I mean, demographics are destiny, and nations rise and fall based upon, oftentimes just raw manpower. And there's military applications for that. There's economic, you're going to get an inverse triangle of economics, where you're going to have a small worker pool trying to feed into this huge, pension. The pension scheme's not going to be there. The Social Security is going to be all messed up. We've never seen this before. We've never seen this kind of inverse population. So it's going to be actually quite interesting experiment to see how that works out. But so I think what we're talking about here is, there's these gender differences. I think if we were to kind of look at the facts, the younger men are going more conservative, younger women probably aren't. And, how do we kind of bridge that gap? Because we need both of them to go to go more conservative.
Well, we need we need another conversation. We could definitely go on, because there's a lot of
I think we should probably save that
on
for later.
Yeah.
But it's a complex issue. And again, Chase, I think Jason and I are just really proud of, what you're doing up there. We know it's not easy to get in the fight, and you've already taken on the establishment. You already helped get rid of a GOP chair who wasn't serving the people. You've already helping set up this Republican group. So we're really excited what you're doing. And again, I mean, I think what we're saying is, it's going to come down to more people like you stepping up, getting involved, getting active. And the first step to all of that is awareness. So the more that you can do that, the more active we can get.
Yeah, thank you. And I honestly just think it all will come down to instilling traditional values back in our society. And that's what will do it for us. I mean, it's easier said than done. The more that we fight, the more that we, educate, stuff like that, and we bring back the values of God, family, country, and freedom, that's where we can really see that shift, and we can get more people involved, and we can ultimately save our state, save our country, and so forth. So do either of you have any last thoughts to wrap up, or are you guys good?
No, you're doing an amazing job, and we keep going, man. Just keep fighting, and get in the cultural stuff. Get out and do street interviews. That's kids are looking for kids to follow, and get out and honestly, I think you'll do very well with that, and I think it'll help grow your platform very quickly.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely do that. That's a good idea, and because like we said, we need more of that. We need more, like you just said, people want someone to follow. People want someone to, what's the word I'm looking for? Someone to
inspire
with. Yeah, inspire, to unite with, and really come together, and so we can grow this movement. So thank you both so much for having this conversation. I've loved having you both, and we're definitely going to need to do it again some other time.
All right. Thanks, Chase.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Chase. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy.
Yep.
Take care, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.